Good evening. Happy Friday. Welcome to Real Talk, where we here on Real Talk talk about real people, real life, real issues. This is Real Talk, and I'm Merle Huckabee. It is a beautiful day here in Chicago. We have some great weather going on. And today we're going to continue our mental health awareness series. We weren't able to tape one last week. The wind decided to just blow the signals out, so we did not tape one last week, but we are certainly glad to be with you here today. And I was so grateful that my guest, who is standing by, was able to set her schedule and join us. As you know, we talked about May being Mental Health Awareness Month, and I had in the series, two series prior that we've dedicated to this topic. This will be the third series that we are dedicating to mental health awareness. We had Courtney Mitchell, who was the young lady who is the yoga and stretch instructor, who shared her experience with mental health, and she suffered from clinical depression. And she advocated for herself. She actually knew that something was wrong. She talked to her mom, and she said one of the most important things was that her mom listened, and her mom agreed that if she felt she needed help, then to certainly by all means get that assistance. And so she did, and she found at the core of that was grief. She was still grieving the death of her father. But the beautiful part about all of it is that she found a way to connect through dance, through yoga, through stretch, and she shares that healing process today. We're going to tune back in with Courtney at a later date. I'd like to catch her actually in action. She also brought it down to having faith. In the series 2 weeks ago, we talked about our get with our guest Tracy Lanier, who is the licensed clinical social worker from University of Chicago. She took us to the clinical side of mental health. And as I said when we talked about this, and I had asked her, our description of mental health, for those of you who may not have tuned in, you know, um, Tracy said mental health is us, and it is our emotional and our well being. It's how we make choices and decisions, it's how we feel. And that impacts everyday life for everyone. And I think that if we really are going to be serious and honest, as I've said in past shows, I think we all have felt down and depressed at some point of time. But Tracy Lanier shared with us again that there are symptoms that you definitely have to recognize and you have to watch out for. And the symptoms could be different in adults and children. But the most important thing is you do have to pay attention. And sometimes people can look well, and we know that on the can. I don't know if you've ever seen those people. I have seen people and worked in the workplace where there are people so bubbly and they're so happy each and every day. And you got to know that at some point, everybody gets down and is challenged by mental health. And when we go to the doctor, um, we think about our physical health. We check in on the physical health, but it's important to tune in and check into how you are feeling. And if you know that you're in a down spot, or you're down, or you're depressed, or you're not able to move, as Tracy Lanier said, and get up and do some of those things of keeping up your hygiene, and you're being social and you're not wanting to be as social as you used to be, these are some signs. These are some things that we need to tune in and to check on. So today, I want to talk to our guest. And before I bring her in, I want to, in the news this past week, we had Naomi Osaka, who is a tennis player. And as anybody who knows me, they know that my girls, both my oldest daughter played tennis, and my youngest daughter still plays tennis. And I think this is going to shed some light on mental health awareness even more. There is pressure. I think just in everyday living, but on athletes, I think, is going to be able to help the landscape and help people to see that there is pressure in your everyday life. I understand that it's anxiety that Naomi Osaka is dealing with, and that's very common. And if she doesn't choose to speak in the media, she was willing to take the fines. That's just how much she believed in taking her stance. And so a lot of people, I think that tennis is just a physical game, but it is also a mental game. And you have to mentally be in the game, just like in golf and anything else, because if you're not mentally healthy in there, your game can just go down the toilet. And then the pressure to win. That's another thing. And we're going to talk more about this piece in a later show. But being a mom, and I remember when my daughter Faith was first playing, it just was like a whole new world that unveiled before me. You had a lot of parents who, to my surprise, was putting a lot of pressure on their children, the pressure to win. And I think that, and I mean, I've seen all kind of things. I've seen parents go and take their kids off the courts, and this was back, several years ago, taking their kids off the court, cussing at them when they're done, and maybe if they didn't win the match, cursing them out and grabbing them. And there's a lot of pressure, and I think that takes away from the enjoyment of the sport of what they do. And so I think that tends to go in a different direction when you're not allowing people to, your children especially, to enjoy what it is that they're doing. We all want to win, but I think if we are doing what we enjoy to do, where we enjoy doing, the fulfillment is so much more. So we talked about what mental health was. It is definitely something that, it affects all of us. However, um, it's something that also through the genes, through chemistry, through experiences, traumas, things that have affected and impacted us can play a role in that. And certainly, the family history. Eating or sleeping too much or too little. And I'm sure you've heard that if you're not sleeping well, there must be a lot on your mind. Pulling away from usual activities, or but the truth is there are some people and who are just reserved, who just stay to themselves, and they're quite happy. I have a daughter who, my youngest daughter, she doesn't have a lot of friends. And at an early point, I was very concerned about her because she didn't seem to want to make a lot of friends. But the thing is, she felt happy being in her space. And my mom even shared with me when she was younger that, she was that same way. She'd rather read a book than go outside and play and interact with others. So sometimes there isn't anything wrong. You just have to know, your children. You have to know who you're dealing with. I want to go and we're going to talk a little bit, like I said, about the sports side of it and athletes in a later show. I want to get right to my next guest. This young lady I've known for several years. I've actually known her mom for almost 40 years. We went to high school together. Her mom is a Julian Jaguar as well. But this next young lady, Amber Payne, she is a young filmmaker. She is a high schooler here in Chicago, going into her senior year in the new school year. I can't believe how the time has flown either. But also her topics of the work that she does dives into topics such as race and gender and mental health, and she, her perspectives, she uses a lot of Black characters to portray. She has some works and things and little short films and videos that she's done in presentations, and I'm going to let her tell you more about that. But she too has battled with mental health, and I'm going to tell you, she's a Black warrior. She's a queen. She is a princess. She is a warrior princess, I'll call her. I'd like for you all to welcome to the show the beautiful, the talented, and young Amber Payne. Amber, how are you today? Welcome to Real Talk.
Uh, Good, I suppose, evening now. Good afternoon, evening, that
Yes.
time. Yes. First of all, thank you so much for your lovely introduction, Mrs. Huckabee. I'm flattered personally. I am doing well this fine day. It's a little sweaty, it's a little hot, but that's the summer. It's Chicago in the summer and 80 degrees. So, but it's been a really nice day. Did some shopping, had some nice frozen treats, had some push-ups, and that's nostalgia.
Oh,
A lot of
that sounds
nostalgia.
so delicious. That sounds delicious.
Yes.
Tell me, I'm so glad, first of all, that you could reset your schedule, because we weren't able to shoot last week. Even a tree blew down over on Lakeshore Drive. It was very interesting how all of that
Hmm.
played out, but I'm so glad to have you today. Would you tell us a little bit more? I didn't want to tell them everything. Tell us a little bit more about you.
Oh, I'm very glad to be here myself. So, hi everyone. Yes, my name is Amber. I'm an Aries. I love reading. I love doing film, as Mrs. Huckabee mentioned. I love studying history. I love studying human nature, like psychology and sociology. I'm really interested in the mental psyche of a lot of people. So, I love just studying topics in philosophy along those lines, which I apply to a lot of my written and film works. So if you see some philosophical techniques and tools mentioned in my work, that may be why. Um, yeah, I'm 17 years old. I have admittedly suffered with mental health issues in my previous years. When I was 8, I will be the first to say I had an eating disorder because I would just stress eat all the time because I had issues with other students when I was in elementary school. So I would go home, I would stress eat, and I would gain weight, and I just couldn't stop myself just binging all that food. And then somehow 4 years later, it went the opposite. When I was in seventh grade, I had this mental illness going on where I thought I was overweight. So I just kept not eating certain days and I would just feel worse. I'd feel sick, and that added on to the depression that was already forming in my life. So that's kind of where that journey started. And I had more anxiety attacks, had bouts of depression. I still had OCD growing up, but then at some point it got a little worse as I got older. And when I was 14, I had attempted suicide, and it was something that was culminating for a lot of years. I think I've always been sort of precocious child. So when I was around 7 or 8 years old, I could sense something was wrong with me. So I always start, looking up therapists, like, who are therapists in the nearby area, and just having that. And I always felt like I could never talk to anyone. So I would just be by myself feeling this way without ever sharing how I felt. Like my mom knew that I was going through issues with the students and bullying, so she pulled me out of that situation. But I think there's so much psychological toll that's taking on you, especially at such a young age. You're expected to make friends and have a nice childhood, but at some point, just that onset of so many things going on at school and then at home, personal things going on at home at a young age that were just hard to face. So that's kind of where my journey's been. I've definitely, things have gotten much better over the years. I'll admit there's some bouts of struggles, and especially in recent times with COVID, but things have gotten better. I feel more comfortable expressing how I'm feeling, how I'm thinking in terms of mental and emotional illness. But that's where my life's been so far. But I'm trying to get a job. I'm getting a new hopefully a new cat soon. I'm, making better friendships. So everything's getting better. And I think that's because I'm being more true to myself and just, I'll be the first to say, you know what? I need help. I want to talk to someone. I'm not feeling good. And having that moment of just saying, I don't feel well, instead of just pretending that I'm okay, is just great. So that's my life so far.
You know, Amber, one, I mean, it is just, I'm just awed, yet encouraged. I mean, that takes a lot of courage to come out and to tell your story, and you have no problems articulating it at all. I mean, you just laid it right on out. I do have to ask one question. You mentioned bullying, you mentioned school. What could you tell us about the experiences? You know, when I was coming up, kids were cruel. I think they're even more cruel. Some of them can be even more cruel today. What could you share from your experience that may help parents to understand, or to reach even other young adults and teens, to let them know that they're not by themselves? What can you share about those experiences in school? You know, of course, we didn't have to deal with a lot of that in the COVID times, but prior, when you were going through this, what could you tell us about the school setting, about other students, about the bullying and peer pressure, and how that played a role?
I'm gonna sound like a middle-aged woman when I say this, but I really think technology has played a huge toll on social life for young adults and teenagers. And I've noticed over the years, as technology's advanced and grown as I have grown, that bullying and peer pressure has gotten collectively worse. And I think for young people, it's even worse because you have to factor in so many things for young people. You have to factor in growth, development, trying to build those connections and gain people skills. And on top of that, you have this element of social media and this there's a freedom that comes with social media. There's like an unlimited freedom that comes with it. And this freedom is that you can say whatever you want, but you can be a different person. You could be Sally in real life, but you could be Jennifer on social media and no one will ever know. No one will ever care to know. So you can tell someone, oh, you're a stupid bitch, go kill yourself. And, that's something that's going to hurt that person they're bullying. And I think with me growing up, I, of course, second and third grades when it really started getting worse. So you had that element of just being mean for no reason. And I think humans naturally have this compulsory nature to try and purge negative feelings they have. And with young people, we have so many things going on, young adults, teenagers. And that's all because of, I think, a pressure on adults too. Adults give us so much pressure as to how we should live our lives. I'll never forget, I was thinking about this the other day, but I talk to myself a lot because it helps me gain my thoughts. And I was thinking SpongeBob's one of the best kid shows ever because SpongeBob teaches kids to have pride in what they do, no matter if you're a fry cook or a chef. And adults don't teach you that. They teach you have to do things in life to be great. You have to go to college, you have to get a job, get a house, you have to get a normal family. You have to just work until you die. You don't have to be happy in work, just work, make money. And there's that pressure that's always onslaught when you're young. You're just out in the world and you have to know you have to do X, Y, and Z to make it. So when you have that element already being a part of the social factor for young people, there's always these negative feelings of being pushed to do things. I think you mentioned this earlier with Miss Osaka and tennis. There's so much mental pressure and just emotional rapidness going on in our lives, and you add social media onto that, and that just makes everything more fast paced, and that adds stress, and just everything is so tense. So I think for me, as I mentioned before, I was a pretty precocious kid, so I loved reading, I loved talking with teachers, I loved just answering questions that I already knew the answer to. And to some students, it looked like I was living the lives that their parents wanted them to live. They were upset that they couldn't achieve certain things and even even though I admit I was a pretty nerdy kid, I still had that pressure of being afraid of, even though I'm living this life that I'm supposed to live. My parents never did that for me, fortunately, but even the media, TV portrays life as being working in a cubicle and doing all of these things. I always thought that that's how life was supposed to be. So I have to always study and try and get straight A's and be this egghead. And that's also an underlying pressure that's already built within you. So I think there's that element there's pressure on both sides, pressure for the kids who are nervous and want to rebel against that lifestyle but can't, and kids who don't want to rebel but conform but also secretly want to. So there's this constant tension of rebellion and conforming that young people always have to face. And social media is all about conforming and rebelling. It's a combination of both. And that adds so much tension, and it's so stressful for so many young people, because you have celebrities who are showing off their successful lives, and they didn't have to work in a cubicle. They didn't have to follow the social norms, and that makes people angry because we had to follow that social life, but you're not. Why are you more successful and I'm not? But then they're secretly miserable and everyone's not happy because they're all supposed to follow a system that doesn't exist. I want to be an artist, and I love that life because when I do my art, I feel happy. I never cared about making money. I mean, of course, you have to for capitalist reasons, but otherwise, I do love making art. And that's the job, that's the career I chose to have because it's something I wanted to abandon of this system that's been in place in the minds of young people. And that's why I've always appreciated film and animation. They teach you there's an outlet. There's a third way. There's a third way from just being a suit, a hippie. You could be both. You can make money, but still be a fun-loving artist. And I think that's something cartoons always try to teach us. But then there's the opposite of the system that teaches us you can't do that.
It's funny that you mentioned SpongeBob. I watched SpongeBob quite a bit when my youngest daughter Miracle, who is the same age you are, she used to love SpongeBob. I used to hear SpongeBob in my sleep, and it's funny because you pointed out something today that I didn't even really realize. He did. He takes pride in being who he is, no matter Mr. Krabs. His boss can tell him he's lousy, he's this, he's that. And even though he does show, that he's sad sometimes and he'll go off and talk to, I think it's his cat or I forget which one it is.
But his snail. Mm-hmm.
His snail. And, so he does take pride in who he is. I just want to back the train up just a little bit. When you were going through this in school, I know we talked about the social media piece, and we know that social media is good for a lot of things. It's a way that we definitely have connected, because back in the time when your mom and I were going to school, when school was closed, it was closed. And it was nothing, any kind of lessons that you could get unless the school was just closed. Well, now, of course, technology has made it possible for us to do work from home remotely as well as to do school. But I want to go back just a little bit with you. When you were talking about the children in school, did you face any challenges there? And if so, and I believe you said you did you ever tell a teacher or a person, a principal or a counselor?
I admit there are times I tried to tell teachers, but they're like, oh, ignore it. Just ignore it. Ignore it.
They
And
blew you off.
I understand there are different generations and how people handle things, but you just can't tell a kid to ignore it so long they feel like they want to kill themselves. And I'll admit, even when I was younger, I just felt so miserable because I tried to ignore it. That led to me stress eating, gang, and eating disorder. So you try and tell adults. I tell you, tell adults if you're having problems. They don't do anything about it. That's where the school system fails young people, teenagers, because you're trying to explain the situation. They just tell you, get some thick skin, you'll be fine. Just rub some spit on it. Just, ignore the boo-boo, it'll go away. But then if you scratch your knee and you just tell it to go away, you'll get an infection. You have to cut your leg off because all the germs and bacteria are eating your leg off. So, yeah, that was my main issue too with the school system. And adults, you try and ask for help, and they just ignore you. They tell you to ignore it. And that's, I think, where one of my other issues came in. That so long I've been told to just, ignore this kid for telling you to go make out the toilet. Ignore this kid for just constantly making fun of you for reading. Ignore it. Just ignore everything that's being thrown at you. And I did ignore it. I ignored it to the point where I just ended up depressed as a 9-year-old. So that worked out. But I think that's another fault of adults, just not understanding and not listening. And even though there are different generations and different things that are taught each generation, mental health is definitely not one of them. And, there are even those, stop bullying seminars that they used to have all the time. And I remember kids used to just not pay attention. We used to just draw on our arms and laugh because we all knew it was a sham. If they really cared about not bullying and stopping bullying and being kind to others, they would actually have systems in place that would end bullying. I think that was another aspect of technology, right? I think they knew cyberbullying was becoming an issue, but before cyberbullying was even a problem, regular bullying was a problem. So
it's something that I don't think, and one, I know what you are saying is very true. I went through an incident with both of my daughters in relation to tennis and tennis coaches, and it it's very disheartening. I guess what I would like to hear from you is, what do you think can be done to circumvent? Do you feel that teachers need and leadership administrators, they need more courses, need more training in this area? What do you think? We need more counselors in the schools, social workers. What do you think? What do you think is the solution?
One word occupation you mentioned was social workers and just counselors, and I think that's definitely something that should be added. I think this issue really does transcend the educational system. It really needs to go to state and government, because there's so many things that can be implemented within this city, this state, this country that actually advocates for having people who are empathetic enough to listen to young people and notice signs of things going on in their lives to do something about it. There are some students I knew growing up who had issues at home, and those things could have been dealt with if we had people that actually cared about helping young people. And adding in that factor of just really understanding how to deal with these issues is something that's really important. Counselors, I think, are an asset. However, they're not used to the best ability. You have counselors that just tell you, oh, just take this medication, you'll be fine, have a good cry. They don't actually ask you questions and talk you through what you're going through. And everyone's so easy to just, like I said, even in the medical industry, put a Band-Aid on it, Oh yeah, just take this, it'll be okay. It'll deal with the chemicals going on in your body. At some point, yes, mental illness can be a chemical factor, but at some point when we actually just talk about backup plans, things to help you when you're being stressed out, if you feel stressed out, it's okay to just step back and not do this thing that's just really stressing you out. It's not helping you.
Well, that's certainly what not Naomi Osaka did. She actually went and withdrew after playing a few matches. She withdrew from the French Open. And I think that she took a stand. And I think that this is what we need to see more of, is people taking a stand in what they believe in. And you mentioned something about, you believe that the state or the government could implement, but what do you think that could be implemented to help with bullying, cyberbullying, with mental health? What do you think could be implemented on a government or municipal level or legislative level to help with
I personally think politicians are so power hungry and greedy, they don't really care about helping others. I think there's so many things that could be done. For example, having opening up, more therapist offices in certain cities or states, having centers, having phone lines for people, like more crisis phone lines. But I think this has a combination of both what politically can be done, but also what the media has done, because the media has for so long portrayed mental health as this taboo, wrong thing, versus actually being open and honest about it. So I think it kind of goes hand in hand with those two factors. The government can definitely put more funding in programs for people with certain mental health issues, phone lines, and for example, certain domestic situations that could happen. They send police in who just know how to, with recent events, stop and shoot. You could have actual counselors go to these domestic situations and try and mediate the situation. There are definitely things that can be put in place to help young adults and people in general that just aren't being done. And the media is also not helping, because in their minds, this is all just a ploy to follow what young people are saying. They don't. My mom used to have this saying where people hear but they don't listen. And I think the media is hearing us say we want you to make mental health not wrong, and you're just trying to say, oh yeah, mental health is something we should all talk about. What are y'all doing? You all are showing TV shows that feature mental health suffering characters, and that's great. But how are you all also trying to advocate for us? How are you all not trying to make money from us by showing these things, which also contribute to the government trying to make money off of us? So it's all just about money and greed that are corrupting the minds of the people in power, rather than actually going out and trying to fund money into organizations that can actually do things for us.
Wow. Um, it's a lot. That was a very loaded response that you gave. And, one thing I want to tell you, I guess I'm considered a former politician because I sat on two school boards for 4 years. And then I did I made an attempt to run for the high school board. Sometimes I don't think, though, that politicians, like you said, that a lot of them can be power hungry. I think for me, it was more of I cared too much. And that's part of the reason I did, I'm doing this show. I want people to be able to come on and talk about the issues that we are not hearing about on the regular news stations on 579. I mean, we hear bits and pieces. They'll say May is Mental Health Awareness Month. I want to continue the conversation on mental health awareness because I think it's something that we need to continue to talk about. It was something that we didn't talk about, and I don't know if you got to see the shows prior, but I mentioned I had an uncle that suffered with mental illness, and I did not know it. And I have my mom all these years later, almost 30 something years later, say, I wonder what happened to my brother. I hope, he wasn't molested or he was this. And here I have the answer as to what did happen because I was there the day that I saw him unravel and come apart. But when you don't know, and this is not a conversation you have, and you're not educated about it, then how did I know? When I was 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, and he's dead now, of course, and he didn't die by suicide. But when I think about, wow, I could have helped. I could have helped resolve. People didn't know what was wrong, but it was a relationship. It was a breakup with a girl, and he really could not handle it. He thought it was something personal against himself, and just decided that life was just not where he wanted to be anymore. But the strange part about all of this is when I remember so clearly, he died the day I was due to go on prom. It wasn't my prom, but I was actually going on I was a junior in high school. And I do remember that coming home, and as I go back in my memory, the night before my uncle died, he was not drinking. He came up and sat at the table. He had taken a bath. Back in those days, we took baths. He took a bath. He cut his hair. He sat and ate with the family. Matter of fact, I remember he wanted some chocolate ice cream, and we got some chocolate ice cream. And it would be the last time that I would see him. And when I came home, the day I was due to go to this prom, police were everywhere. And it was my grandmother found him upstairs against the door. His body was against the door. And I think it was just heartbreaking to us all, because he had started to come around. And I think she thought that maybe he had done something to himself, but what it was later, when we looked at the report, and I was so relieved for my grandmother as a mom, there was no drugs in his system. There was no alcohol in his system. What the doctor said is that his stomach had shrunk. He died from asphyxiation in his sleep. His stomach had shrunk. He ate too much that night. And back prior, he hadn't been eating too much at all. He hadn't ate too much of anything at all. So he overate, and apparently in his sleep it came back up, and that's what killed him. He couldn't wake up to get it out. So, in a sense, I think it was an indirect impact of mental health, because had he been eating and keeping himself healthy and all of this, perhaps maybe that wouldn't have occurred. But we definitely have to keep talking about this. I want to know from you today, as we begin to wrap up, and I certainly am going to invite you to come back. What's different for you today than back when you were having your challenges?
I think what's different today is what you exactly mentioned, becoming more aware of what's going on. I think being educated and just having a support system, having a reliable support system has definitely made my life better. Having family I can talk to, having close knit of friends I can trust myself with, having pets I can even confide in, understanding what's going on and how I'm feeling, and then sharing it has definitely been something that's great in my life. Adding on to that, also, like you mentioned, being aware, like I mentioned earlier, being aware and just stepping back and saying, you know what, I'm not feeling good. I'm just going to share this and purge it out, try and just take a breath and rise above it. I think additionally, having different tools per se, like for me, I love meditating. I love just praying, just finding peace. I love watching something that'll make me laugh, things to distract my brain. Like those comfort movies that always make myself feel great, TV shows. So I think just having like plans A, B, C, D, E, F, G all in order. If ever I'm feeling mentally burnout or just something's going on that it's really bothering me, I just have this set of people and things that just really help me, that I know I can rely on.
I think that it's just awesome. The courage, just the bravery to be able to come and to speak and to talk to us and share your experience and to share and voice. You may not know who it is that you might be helping, that is listening to us, that may see this show. And what you have said, it's okay if you're not okay. It's okay to have a not, to raise your hand and say, I need help. It's okay. And yes, for parents, they have to listen. I got that from you, is that you have to pay attention and you have to listen. Sometimes all maybe it is that you want to do is just talk and have someone that's going to talk to you.
Listen and actually care.
Listen and actually care. Amber, I thank you so much. You're doing some works today. I hope you'll come back and see me and
yes,
we can talk some more, because I'm going to tell you, this conversation has to continue. I don't
Yeah.
care if May was Mental Health Awareness Month. We have to keep the conversation going. And
Mm-hmm.
so, if that means that we have to dedicate so many of our episodes every month to this subject, that is what we're going to have to do. Will you come back and join us?
Oh, most definitely. I love this space, and thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me and allowing me to share my thoughts and opinions and having that conversation, that dialogue with you.
Is there anything else that you want to share that maybe that you didn't get an opportunity before we wrap up?
I think to you and the audience, just go in peace, and thank you for allowing me to have this opportunity with you all. You know, it's okay to go out and say, I need someone to talk to. There's definitely, you're not alone. You're not alone. So please find your peace and be at peace. Ashe.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Amber. Everyone, I've been blessed today by this conversation. Amber, you have works that are you've done short videos. Where can someone find your works?
Yes, you can find all my film work on my YouTube channel. It's all lowercase, one word, films, FILMS 326. Or you can go on my Instagram page, same handle, and I sometimes you can check out my work. I'm having a Google site being created right now, so you can definitely see my written and photography works. So all of that's going to be in the making, but for right now, it's all just the handle films 326 on YouTube and Instagram.
Wow, I look to hear you. I know we're going to hear more from you in the future in the film industry, and I know you're going to be tackling this subject as well as other subjects that you have a passion and you care so much about. Thank you so much for coming on, Amber, and I look forward to talking with you more in the future. Best to you in all that you're doing and filmmaking, and peace to you, my beautiful warrior princess. Thank you so much for
Thank
coming on
you.
today.
Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm just floored by that conversation, and I think it's a conversation we all need to hear more about and more of. You know, suicide was the 10th leading cause of death in the US in 2020, according to the National Institute on Mental Health. An average of 132 Americans die by suicide each day, and 1.4 Americans attempted suicide. It is the second leading cause of death for ages 10 to 34. And again, the second leading cause of death for ages 10 to 34, and that was in 2020. And the fourth leading cause of death for ages 35 to 54. Before we go to my brother Phil, who has been holding on, I'm sure he's waiting to talk to us and get an update from him of what's going on. I want to share with you that the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, again, is 1-800 273 TALK. That's 1-800 273 TALK. That is the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. And here on Real Talk, we're going to be doing more episodes dedicated to mental health. Before we close out, I gotta go talk to my brother Phil. I've been missing Phil. Phil, we haven't talked to you in 2 weeks. Phil, what's going on with you? How you doing? You sent all that warm air from Arizona, El Mirage to here. I thank you for it, but man, we gotta turn the air conditioners on. How you doing?
Oh, I'm blessed. I'm blessed. Can you hear?
I can hear you. You got my beret on, brother. I gotta get that beret. I'm telling you, I gotta get it. You're doing good. We missed you. It's been so much going on,
Yeah.
which to me, it all is underlining the foundation of it all has to do with mental health, whether somebody is going to talk about it or not, with the mass shootings, everything. What's going on in your world, Phil?
Well, first and foremost, I'd be remiss if I didn't tip my hat to that young lady, Amber
Yeah.
Payne. You
Yes.
know, you give God the praise, and out of the mouth of babes come the truth. And I tell you, she painted what is going on in our youth today.
Yes. Yes,
And
she
to
did.
and to put upon that everything else that's going on, it's ridiculous. You know, you're right to continue this talk about mental health. You're right, because it's something that needs to be addressed every day, not just one day.
Yes.
With
Absolutely.
all the things going on in our Congress, all the things going on in our justice system, all the things going on, heck, in everyday life, people are wearing this. They're wearing this on the inside, and like I said, this is why I started my broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
I,
Mm-hmm.
I needed an outlet, and to see that young lady express herself as articulately,
Yes.
well, one that just brought something into my heart that I can appreciate. That's why I serve. That's why I speak out. That's for children like that, showing who we are as a people, and not just blacks, not just minorities, but an American. That's who we are. She,
Yes.
she's the epitome of what we want for our future.
Yes.
And we have to do what we can to clear the way of all the tragedy, of all the darn, she mentioned cyberbullying.
Mm.
And I'm gonna tell you, see, let me share with you. When I was a kid, I wasn't somebody you could bully.
I know that's right.
I I was, however, somebody the bullies didn't like, because I would always protect the weak.
Yes.
Always.
Yes.
I had a friend. He suffered from Bell's palsy.
Mm.
Bell's palsy.
Mm.
Jerry was his name. And I came out one day and I saw a group of kids surrounding him. I remember it distinctly. I was about 10 years old. And they were just jabbing at him, picking at him, this and that. We were at camp. And the camp counselors weren't saying anything, this and that. So I took matters in my own hand. Right or wrong, I took matters in my own hand. I started throwing people,
Uh-oh.
starting with the biggest one. And finally, the camp counselor that came over there and asked me what was going on, I said, if you paid attention to what was going on, you would see something that just cannot stand. If you have any kind of compassion in your heart, you would not allow this to go on. You wouldn't just turn your head. And that's something like Amber is pointing out. That
Mm-hmm.
parents, sometimes we just look to the side and say, get over it. This and that. Buck up or whatever. Well, sometimes you can't just buck up. Sometimes your mental or physical abilities won't allow you to, especially your mental. If your mind is featuring something that should be, but the entire environment is dictating something else, how do you fight that? And
Right.
that's what a lot of people, that's not just kids, that's what a lot of people face today.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely important that we continue this subject matter on mental health, because what happens in your environment has an adverse effect directly upon each of us as an individual.
That's right.
You know.
That's right.
Yeah.
Phil, it's the thing that in all three episodes that we keep coming back to is faith
Yeah.
and God. And I don't think, and she said it herself. And our previous guest, the licensed clinical social worker Tracy Lanier, she brought it on home, back to the Word of God, and so did Courtney Mitchell, our first guest. And so that is the center of it all. And I'll say it again. I just wonder where this world would be if we, had people who consulted God first before they did what they did in these, leadership roles, legislative roles. And I think that's important. I just wonder what the landscape of this world would look like. It's a very mental health awareness is something like Naomi Osaka, you heard me say earlier.
Mm.
She withdrew from the French Open and was willing to pay the fines to
You know
not
what?
talk to the media. Now, and she felt so strongly about her stance and her position on this
Mhm.
that she just said, hey, to heck with it. My mental health means more. And I'm so glad her sponsors are awesome. I mean, she made $55 million this year. She didn't just do it playing tennis. But I'm so glad her sponsors are backing her and this topic that we need to continue to talk about. And we are going to continue to talk about it here on Real Talk. I mean, I want people to like and share and comment on our shows. And definitely, but that's not why I'm doing this. I'm doing
Right.
this because we've got to have a conversation, and we've got to have conversation about topics that affect and impact everyday people.
Right.
And that we're not going to see this on channel 5, 7, 9 and some of those shows,
Because it won't pay for the advertising.
Yeah. Well,
You
maybe that's
know,
what I got to do is I got to give me some advertisers, some sponsors. That's coming though. That's coming. We're gonna let God
Well,
work in
well,
His time.
tell them to look at the title of the show and understand that it's going to be real talk. It ain't going to be talking about what they want to talk about. It's talk about what needs to be talked about. We need to have the conversations,
Yes.
the multiple conversations of what's going on. And this platform that you've created is so abundantly appropriate for it.
Yes.
I thank you for allowing me to come on to express my opinions and whatnot, because there's a lot that need to be talked about. There's a lot, and I turn on CNN and the first thing they want to talk about is, I don't like saying his name. The former president can now get back on Facebook in 3 years. I don't care. I don't care. What are they doing out there? We don't. With everything going on in Congress right now, we got the Voting Rights Act. We've got the George Floyd Policing Act going on. We've
And
got
I'd like
all
to see some movement with that. I mean, we got
some
the Asian
movement. We keep
quickly.
yeah, we keep hearing about where they're making progress. We were making progress.
Mhm.
Get rid of the filibuster. Get rid of the stigma of hate that it's connected to. The filibuster was connected with anti-slavery laws. They used the filibuster to strike down anti-slavery laws. They used the filibuster to strike down anti-lynching laws back in the 20s. All in the entire time the Civil Rights Act was being pushed, they were using the filibuster to fight it. Every time we see the filibuster being used, it's something that's non-progressive, non-uniting to keep us or blacks and minorities down. Okay, once I talked about it on my broadcast today, that if America adopted an ideology of the foxhole, a foxhole mentality, that means like when you, as a soldier, if we taking rounds from downrange, in armed conflict, I want to know that the person on my right and the person on my left has got my back. We don't care about their politics. We don't care about their religion. We don't care about their, anything, their sexual orientation, none of it. As an American, we should be worried and understand and comfortable with the fact that they have my flank. I got everything in between. I'm gonna keep them alive, and they should do their job to keep us all alive also. If we can get that foxhole mentality that you see in the military, then this country would live to be its greatest example of human evolution ever to exist in the history of mankind. But you always got somebody want to drag an anchor. They want to drag the anchor of history. Look at our Congress right now. They don't even want to fix the roads. The bridge in Memphis is about to split. If that thing goes, that's going to cut off a whole lot. It's got a gap in it. Literally the bridge has a physical, you can see it split down the middle. Wow. And I don't know if you've ever driven over that bridge or seen how wide the Mississippi River is. If it go, a whole lot of folks going with it. If it's still open, and they ain't gonna close it because it's too much money involved.
Wow.
And that's and that MONEY thing seems to be that's the real lobbyist. Money is the real lobbyist.
Hey, my husband said just follow the money.
Exactly. You follow the money, you'll find the show.
Mm-hmm.
And we got people getting murdered on a daily basis, mass murders. You got 12-year-olds and 14-year-olds breaking into somebody's house, shooting at police.
Yeah, man. Not only that, they carjacking too.
Yeah. I mean, where are we at as a nation? We want to shine this beacon that we are the epitome of morality on this planet, and telling all these countries that are doing all these atrocities, like China just celebrated their 40th, I believe, anniversary of Tiananmen Square. What they put the military out there to keep people from remembering it. But I remember it like yesterday. I remember that one man standing in front of that tank, boldly, in the face of tyranny. That, to me, was more American than what I've seen of America the past 40 years.
Wow.
We should stand in the face of tyranny boldly as a nation. But when you got people that want to bring back slavery from 600 years, that don't even want to remember the hundreds of people massacred in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1921 because of jealousy, that's the kind of thing we're up against as a society. And I'm not saying just black and minority. See, it involves all Americans. If we can pick and choose who's going to be it today. 9/11, it was the people from the Mideast and India, because they didn't know that India is not in the Mideast. They were beating people up. There's all kind of stuff. World War II, they interned the Japanese, but they didn't touch the German Americans.
Yes.
We pick and choose. Any conflict, any issue that's going on in this country, society picks and chooses where they want to be, so that unfortunately, I have to say it, that white supremacist viewpoint can be advanced, and that needs to change.
Yes.
Now the biggest thing is that sector is worried about not being a majority anymore, and that's what's causing all this stuff. That's what's causing these messed up voting laws in Texas. They don't even want to do critical race theory anymore. Teach the truth. Well, how can you advance as a nation if you want to continue to lie to the very fruit of that nation?
Yes.
And when I say the fruit, I do mean the children.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Phil, you and I are going to have a lot to talk about on next week. I believe I'm going to bring you in as my guest next week, and that we can have a longer conversation. Okay. I want to talk to you about what I just found out about Black Wall Street. Oh man, we got a lot, and I gotta wrap up now. But I definitely think next week you and I need to just have some time to talk about a lot of what's going on.
Oh yeah.
So get ready for me. Are you gonna be able to join me next week?
Oh, I'll clear everything. Wife's going out of town. Yeah, I'm not. I got
Not
the day
going with
off.
You're not going with me. You could just take
Huh?
your computer and be on the road, you know?
No, my wife, she's going to visit her family in California.
Okay.
Sometimes you got to get away. Sometimes you got to take a break from me. I don't know how long she put up with me 14 years already.
Hey, with that beret, Phil, I'm telling you, you know, it was the Guardian Angels. That's who used to be in Chicago. That
Uh-huh.
group that used to wear the berets.
Uh-huh.
I don't know
The
what
Phil
happened to
Bynum.
them.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for coming on. Let's talk next week. Definitely thanks. If you want to learn more about Phil Bynum, he does. He comes on and does a actual show. I feel a 20-minute show as he's riding his bike and telling the world about what's going
Well,
on.
real quick. Currently, we are under 100-degree temperatures. I ain't gonna be no riding the bike.
Oh
Yeah.
Lord. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
we got to respect the heat.
all right, right, because that's the heat will take us out.
Yeah.
You can catch Phil on Facebook, Phil
Yeah.
Bynum, and look at his rise and what he says. He keeps his ear to the ground. Thank you so much, Phil, for joining us today. As we wrap up, I want to thank you all for joining us and our guests, Amber Payne and Phil Bynum. Please know that National Suicide Prevention Line, I'm going to stress this, is 1-800-273-TALK. We're going to continue our conversation on mental health. And so we'll be doing more episodes dedicated to this. Thank you for joining us. Please like, comment, and share this show with friends and family. We will see you here next week on Real Talk. Stay safe and enjoy this beautiful weekend. Have a great evening, everyone. Bye bye.